I mean, still some shchita involved, but good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shleim Falan Chai Basarach for Meir Ben Cyril Peril. We're at the Mishnah on the bottom of Lamed Tesamid Base. 2 lines from the bottom. Hashoichet l'shem Harim, l'shem Gavoyis, l'shem Yam, l'shem Naharis, l'shem Midbaris. Someone who shechts, and he has in mind to be ovid the mountains, the heights, the cliffs, for the oceans, for the rivers, for the deserts. Shchitase psula. His shchita is pasal. This is something we came across back when we were learning Avodah Zarah, things that are attached to the ground, that are part of the natural landscape. You can't make them into an Avodah Zarah. But the Chama Mamasakin, like we're going to see soon that the Chama Mamasakin that is possible. Sagt Gemara, Shnayim Oichzim Mesakin v'Shechetin. If you have two people that are shechting together, Echel L'Shem and one of them is shechting for one of these entities that we just mentioned. Echel L'Shem Davar Kasha. The other one, Stam is shechting, he's just shechting maybe for a Shritas Chullin. Shritas Psula, again, still going to be possible. So, good morning, Rafal. We just said in the Mishnah, if someone shechts for some kind of avodah zarah, for some natural object that should be avodah zarah, it passes your shchit. Zakmar, psula in zivche mesim loy. It's mashma that it's possible, the shchit is possible, but it's not considered that he was ovid avodah zarah. It means they're not. It's not going to be possible. It's not going to be asur b'hana as something that was used for avodah zarah. Right? It says psula. It means the shechita doesn't work. It doesn't say that you can't use the nevela and sell it to a guy for a mini. Hashoichet l'shem harim, l'shem gavoyis, l'shem naharis, l'shem midbaris. Someone shechs for the mountains, for the heights, for the rivers, for the deserts. L'shem chama, include the sun, the levana, and the moon. L'shem kechavim azalis, for the stars and the constellations. L'mishum michal hasar agadol, for Michael, the malach, the whatever that means. Or kechavim azalis. L'shum, I'm sorry, I skipped. L'shum michal hasar agadol, l'shum shilshul cotton. Or if he has in mind, instead of this great Michael, he has the smallest worm he has in mind. Hara'elu zivchei mesim. All these things are zivchei mesim. So why does our mission just say puzzle? We say over here that that it does become zivchei mesim. Rabbi lekasha hada amalahar the amar legadadahar. All these things in the brisa where we said that you are going to be chayiv for zivchei mesim, that's going to be make it asa b'hana. It's not talking about where he was ovid the har itself, but rather he was ovid to the Rashi says l'gadar l'malach hamamun al aram. He's being ovid the angel that is appointed as the overseer or the mamuna, that he's the appointed for these things. So he was being ovid the malach that is in charge of the ham. It said Michal Sar Hagadol. Now it's not talking about the malach appointed on top of that, but the point is that we gave one concrete example of a malach and saying they're all like that case. They're all talking about malachim appointed in charge, which that a person could be ovid, and that would be zivchei mesim, that would asur pahana. Our mission is where the person directly was ovid, not for the malach, but rather for the mountain or the river or the ocean. Shema mina. That is the text. Okay. Now that we're embarks on a different topic with a lot of implicit and background, which and the Gemara is going to get to a lot of the background in the discussion. On Rav Huna, Haisa behemas chaberoi revutza lefanei. Someone had his friend's animal laid out in front of him. Talking about where it's laid out in front of him because if it wasn't laid out, he would pick it up and put it down. He would l'chayra be oived on. He would be kainet by being magbiyet. So we want to talk about where it's someone else's behema and he didn't pick it up, and therefore he wasn't kainet. So it still belongs to someone else. And it was lying down lifnei avodas kechavim, and it was in front of an avodah zarah, meaning it was ready to be used as an avodah zarah. Kiven sheshachet ba simen echad, as we're going to see later on, that it's not. There's shittas that say it has to be bedafka in front of an avodah zarah. Kiven sheshachet ba simen echad, since let's say this belonged to Reuben, and Shimon is shechting it. Since he shechted one siman of the animal, asr. Rav Huna says it's going to be asr. Now, this is, as the Gemara is going to explain partially, and Rashi will explain as well. Savala ki ad amar ula amar Rav Yechon afal pisha amar mishtachel behemis chaber eliyasu. Even though the rule is generally that and if someone bows down, if Reuben bows down to Shimon's let's say his vase, it doesn't make Shimon's vase into an object of avodah zarah. A person cannot cause someone else's thing to become an object of avodah zarah. But Ula says, Asa b'maisa asra. If you do a maisa, it asas it. So that's why Rav Huna said, even though it's someone else's object, it's someone else's animal, since, and as we're going to see, general rule is that you can't even aser something that's alive. A live animal in general can't become, just like we said about the har, that it can't become an object of avodah zarah. The same thing would apply to a live animal. But once he shechts it's no longer, after it dies, it's no longer going to be alive. We say when he shechted a siman echad, it becomes asa. So he holds like Ula that even though the general rule is that you can't aser davar she'ein shaloi, if there's a maisa, that's different. If you just bow down, you can't, like Ula said. But if you do a maisa, you could. So let's see the Rashi on this. Haisa behemis chaberi. Zok Rashi. It's 2 lines for the end of the narrow lines. Loi mi boye shaloi de mitzra mishum takravis gechavim b'shchita simenecha. Not just his own animal, which it would become asa for having been used for avodah zarah with one simen. The avagav devar chaim ein nesarim lehedyet. Even though something that's alive doesn't become asa. Neither because it was actually worshipped, or because it was set aside for avodas kechavim kaimam tmura. For Hadjid, it's going to be shari as long as it's alive. Miyuki avad ma'isa b'gufayim mitzri. But when you do a ma'isa, that overcomes the fact that it's alive, and that would dispel that problem. If you, just like we say that you can't make a mountain become asur by bowing down to it, but if you dig a ditch in that mountain, since you did a mice in it, that overcomes the fact that it's not alive. So the same thing would be with an animal. Once you do a mice in it, that takes away the fact that it's not alive. So just to dispel some confusion, we're going to say the fact that he's doing a Maisa is taking away two things, as the Gemara is going to clarify. With Rashi is saying something that the Gemara doesn't clarify. The first thing that takes away is Balei Chayim, that normally can't become a Veitzkecham, which is not really going to be the subject of the Gemara, so that's why Rashi is clarifying it. The Gemara's subject is going to be that it belongs to someone else, and you can't ask something that belongs to someone else. And that we're also saying that the Maisa is going to address that as well. Rashi is jumping the gun a little bit here, and he's saying this siman echad. When we say siman echad, doesn't mean that he did just one siman. Do adan lechatzi siman. Ubehemes chaveri nami avagav the pshila and dein adam oisu davar shein shloyash beinu ravuna also laba Maisa koldu. Like we said, the Gemara is going to say that a Maisa koldu does help. So again, now that we saw Rashi's explanation, let's review what we said. Amar Rav Huna. If someone's behema was lying down in front of an avodah zarah, kibbutz shachat b'shem echad asra. Since he shechted one siman asas, savalaki adam ra'ula amar Rav Yechon av bisha amar mishtach lehinis chaveroi loy asra. Even though the general rule is if you bow down to someone else's behema, it can't asr it because it's the other person's. But there's an exception to that. Asa b'maisa asra. If you do a maisa, and that means asa b'maisa is any kind of maisa it asas. Rashi jumped the gun and told us that this siman echad means any kind of maisa. But Ula said b'shem Rabbi Yechon, he said asa b'maisa. That clearly is not a full siman. That's any kind of maisa. Once you make any physical manifestation, that overcomes the rule that you can't affect someone else's property to make it avodah zarah. Eisvei Rav Nachman Rav Huna. Rav Nachman asked on Rav Huna's assertion that if you shecht one siman of someone else's behema, it's going to make it avodah zarah. In fact, there hashoichet chatas b'Shabbos. If someone shechts a carbon chatas on Shabbos, b'chutz, and he does it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, l'avodas rechavim, and he has in mind that it should be for avodah zarah, chayiv shalosh chatois. He's going to be chayiv 3 chatois. It's pretty obvious what the 3 chatois is. First of all, he shechted on Shabbos, which is a malacha, and he shechted a carbon b'chutz. You chayiv a chatas if you do b'shegeg, if you bring a carbon outside of the Beis Hamikdash, not b'tzafen. Whereas chatas has to be b'tzafen in the Beis Hamikdash. And he did l'avodas kechavim, bringing a carbon to avodah zarah is also chayiv karas and b'shegeg chatas. Biyamat, if you'll say like Rav Huna, kivin sheshachet b'siman echad asra, once you shecht a single siman, that already, at that point, it already becomes avodah zarah. Ashkuti chutz lo mechayiv. How is he being chayiv for shechting b'chutz? It's not a carbon anymore. Once he did the single siman, it was already puzzle as a carbon. So there's nothing. So like the Gemara says, mechatech ba'akahu. That which when he finishes the shchita, when he does the rest of it, when he's doing it b'chutz. When he's not finishing his shchutei chutz. He's not making a shchutei chutz. He only he started a shchita, but it became an animal, a puzzle animal. He didn't finish the shchita b'chutz. You have to do a whole shchita b'chutz in order for of a carbon. It wasn't a carbon once he did a single siman. Rav Papa answers, so it's shver on Rav Huna. Rav Papa hacha b'chatas ha'oif askinon. We're talking about a chatas ha'oif. If you remember, an oilus ha'oif, you have to do 2 siman. But a chatas ha'oif, you only have to do 1 siman. The kula b'hadi adadi ka'asi. So a single siman We already know Rashi said that it doesn't have to be a whole simon, but the Rashi was, like I said, jumping the gun a little bit. That's going to be the conclusion of the Gemara later. But at this point, we're assuming you have to do the whole simon in order for Reb Huna's rule to apply, that he did a Maisa and it's going to already be Avodah Zarah. So everything is happening at the same time. It's not first becoming an Avodah Zarah, and then later on he's being Chayav for Shchutei Chutz. When he cuts through the simon, at that time, when he finishes that simon, even though it belongs to someone else, it's going to be a Avodah Zarah. He's going to be Chayav for that, and he's going to at the same time be Chayav for Shabbos. We're doing a Shchita on Shabbos. And he's also going to be chayiv v'shchutei chutz, because it was not removed from the possibility of being a carbon. It wasn't. It was still a carbon until he completes the siman. And when he completes the siman, he also completes the shchita as a carbon. Sagt the Gemara, Michti, Rav Huna kaman amar l'shmaitze ka'ula. We said Rav Huna is based on Ula's statement, right? It was like a two-stage thing. We said Rav Huna said that if you shecht achatas, a siman echad of achatas, no, it didn't say achatas. It says if you had an animal that was in front of Ayukechavim, when you shecht one siman, it's aser. And he said because he holds like Ula that says that even though Avli Shamar Mishtachel Behem is Chaver, also b'maisa aser. Ula just said also b'maisa aser. And we said that Rav Huna is based on Ula. Ula Maisa Koldu Kaman. All Ula said was Asaba Maisa. He didn't say you did Siman Echad like Rav Huna. And Rav Huna is based on Ula. So how could you say that we're talking about Eif, that it's Avoida, its Shchita is completed with a Siman? Ula seems to state his din when you do any kind of Maisa. It means that the two options over here are either you do any kind of Maisa, any minimal, any kind of physical act is sufficient. Rav Huna seemed to say you have to do a more substantial, you have to actually do a siman. So which one is it? So the chayra from Ulat's mashma that it just has to be anything. So therefore, we're gonna go back. We're saying it's not the dafka talking b'chatas oif, but oima b'gmazvicha who oivda. We're talking about where this shaychet, who's saying I'm being oived avodah zara, I'm doing it l'shem avodah zara. He says I want this to be when I finish my full shchita, I want it to be shachat for this avodah zara.
So it doesn't have to be a chatas oif. It can be.
It doesn't have to be an oif, right? It could be an animal. It means at the end of the two simonim. It's very interesting that a person can limit his avodah zara, right? What do we care that he's saying? I want it to be an avodah zara at the end. He's saying I'm doing it for avodah zara. So how does he get to dictate that his ma'isa of avodah zara doesn't take effect until the end? You're doing avodah zara. I don't care what you say. You're specifying how you're doing. Like, it's almost like we're importing our sense of how a person does a real shchita, or how he does a real, or he does some. You can limit, you can make restrictions and t'nayim in how you make a legal transaction, or even how you bring a carbon. But how can you make a restriction in how you do an avera? That it seems interesting to me. Okay, if that's the case, if the way we understand the Bryce according to Rav Huna together with Ula, that means Rav Huna holds like Ula that any minimal Maisa is enough for him to make someone else's carbon, someone else's animal into an Avodah Zarah. But the way that the Brisa said you could be over on all three chatayas, he has to bring three chatayas, is talking about where he limited and he said, I only want my avodah zarah to take place at the end. And therefore, it was shchutei chutz, it was still a carbon at the time that he completed the shchita. Ihachi, my ir yechatas. Why does the Brisa say we're talking about bedafka, a carbon chatas, yibur chatas? Which a carbon chatas does not belong to the owner. Lishmeinan zevach. That means it doesn't make a difference whether this is a chatas. Let's see what Rashi. Why would that? What would that be? What would we? Why the chatas make more sense? Ma'ir chatas the nakat. Listen to Yashaychet. This is like about halfway down. Ma'ir chatas the nakat. Listen to Yashaychet. This is zevach. The mashma kolza. I'm sorry. Listen to Yashaychet. This is zevach. The mashma kolzvacha. When the nakat chatas the isanami ba'oif. From the fact we pick chatas l'chayr is because we're talking about ha'oif. Like the first teretz that we had given, that we're talking about a oif. Shmam chatas oif kol. By a oif, it has to be bedafka chatas. Because if it was talking about a oila still has two simonim. It must have been, we said chatas, because we wanted to limit it to a chatas oif, which is one simon. But oila matzil minka mishum the oila oif, boy shnei simonim. The lava I'm a big mazricha of the ene of the ala big mazricha. Am I echel ashminin? Oif behemen abichai. Right? It's a two-stage thing. The reason for chatas is because it must be to be mechal between oil and a chatas, and that's only an afkamina by oif. So why would we say bedafka chatas? Okay. So he says another tense. We're going, so we're going to go back that we are, like we've proven from the fact that we said chatas, we're talking about a oif. And we're talking about a chatas. But if that's the case, it has to be, what about Ula? Ula said, Maisa Koldahu. Why do you need a whole simon? We're talking about where he came to do the avoida, he came to shech the animal, where the simon was already half cut. Voice of kolshu. When he does even the slightest cut, we say with siman echad, it means it just makes it from halfway to a rov. So as soon as he does that little bit, he's finishing his shchita for the avodah. He's also, since he's doing it on someone else's thing, we're going according to, like Ula said, a maisa koldu is enough to make it that he's able to be oived someone else's animal, and he's also going to be chayiv for Shabbos. To kul b'hadi adadi kashin. In that case, everything is happening at the same time. Okay, Amr of Papa. You love the Amr of Rav Huna, Simon Echad. If not for the fact that Rav Huna had said a Simon Echad, if you just said if you shech, now we were saying Simon Echad, we're not saying Simon Echad as opposed to a Maisa Koldu. We're saying Simon Echad as opposed to finishing a whole act, finishing a whole Maisa, meaning to do both Simon. When Rav Huna said Simon Echad, he meant to say, and this is what we understand, there's two options. It's either you have to complete an act, or you can do a kosher. So if not for the fact that Rav Huna had said that you could even do a Maisa kosher, lehavi chatas tiyufta, we wouldn't have had a problem with why we said a chatas. Because we would have said that you need, we have to talk about a chatas Let's see the Rashi. The Gemara is Rashi is going to explain it. Lahavi chatas tiyafta the ula meiresh the ula meiresha kavasakadat behemakoy dikla meiva meiser rabakama ula the hainu gemar meiser. I'm sorry, that's not the way Rashi explains it. V'lav the amar of Huna siman echad v'asid ad ula the meiser kol du amar lahavi chatas tiyafta. I'm sorry. We wouldn't have had the question of Ula from the beginning, when we would have thought that it's talking about Behema, because then it would, we want to say a Chatas, because a Chatas, when someone brings a Chatas, he's bringing it he's not going to be able to eat anything. He no longer, the person who's shechting it, in the Brisa, when we said that he's shechting it, he's going to be chayiv for three things, we would understand Rav Huna would not have been a problem. We wouldn't have had the kasha from Ula, because we would have said the reason why it says chatas is that it shouldn't be something, we want it to be something that doesn't still belong to the owner. Right. Zok the Gemara. So if not for the fact that Rav Huna specified siman echad, which means a ma'isa kol dehu, we never would have had the kasha that we asked earlier. Why ihachi? Why did it say chatas? My ma'isa rabba, because ma'isa means a ma'isa rabba. We're not talking about where we would have thought that it means that he has to complete the act. So that's why you have to have a chatas while it still belongs to. The Amar Papa, Ilav the Amar, it's a strange formulation that the Gemara is now going back and saying basically what we said before, but putting it into this whole, he's restating that if we didn't have the statement of Rav Huna, which really was, we really got it from Ula, then we wouldn't have had a problem with chatas. We would have said, understood chatas is not because of chatas oif, but we need chatas to tell you that it no longer belongs to the owner. Amar Papi, lav the Amar of Huna behemas chavera, if he not said that it belongs to someone else, have a chatas to yufta. Well, then also chatas would not be shver. We'd have a reason why it says bedaf chatas in the brisa. My timer, didei matziyasa the chaver le matziyasa, because something that is someone else's, Rav Huna would have said that he can only do aser his own thing, but something that belongs to someone else he can't, and we have to say a chatas to make it a case that it doesn't belong to the person who's shechting it. Right? Rav Huna had said he's talking about behemoth chaveri. By the case of the brisa, where we said a person who shechts, the assumption is that over there, I had a reason why. Let me try to remember it. The brisa said a person who shechts, he's chayiv for three things. He's chayiv for Shabbos, and he's chayiv. Right. I think the reason is he's chayiv for Shabbos. He's chayiv for shchutei chutz, and he's chayiv for being over avodah zara. I imagine if it was talking about someone else's thing, he'd also be over for gneva. So that's why we assume he's talking about his own thing. I didn't see that, but that was the way I understood it. In fact, Amar Pshita, you've just restated what we said before, the way we understood Rav Huna. So what are you saying this for? He said no, because you might have thought that even a chatas, you said it said chatas, it would have said chatas to give an example of something that no longer belongs to him. But maybe you'd say a chatas also still belongs to the owner in the case of the brisa, because since he's getting a kapara from it, it's still he has some sense of ownership, and therefore his being oived it would be oived even without all these extra exclusions, without this extra rules that you could be, like Rav Huna said, you could be oived someone else's thing with a maisa, even a maisa koldu. Kamashmala. Rav Nachman, Rav Amnon, Rav Yitzchak Amri, they disagree with Rav Huna. They say, Ein Adam Oiseh Davar She'ein Shaloi. They say a person cannot ask something that's not his. Rav Huna had said that there's an exception, that if someone does a Maisa Kol Dahu, then he can even be Oived something that belongs to someone else. They're saying, these three Amoraim are saying, it's under all circumstances a person can't be Oived something, he can't make it Asr as an Avodah Zarah if it doesn't belong to him, even if he does a Maisa. Meisvei, Hashoichet Shachatas B'Shabbos B'chutz L'Avodas Kechavim Chayiv Shel Chatayis. The brisa that we brought before, they could be chayiv for avodah zarah, and chayiv for shchutei chutz, and he's chayiv for Shabbos. V'kminim b'chatas oif b'chatzi kanapagum, and we had explained it that we said it's talking about a chatas, right? We had to explain why it says a chatas. So we're going to have to say, like Rav Huna, that we're talking about chatas ha'oif, because the chatas ha'oif is to tell you, even though it only has one siman. So why? According to them, that they say a person is ein adam oiseh davar she'ein shaloi, you don't have to say this. So why did we have to say chatas or chatas ha'oif? It could have just said any case. Could have said an oila. Because you're never going to, even if you do a Maisa, you're not going to be kainet, so you don't have to protect your ability to be chayiv shchutei v'chutz by making something where they're both going to happen at the same time.
Even though chatas is not yours, isn't the fact that ein adam oiseh davar she'ein shaloi, if chatas is not yours, isn't that a contradiction?
Let's go. Let's continue. You're
right.
correct. So we're saying kula v'hadei adar kashin aval zevach loy v'nein adam oiseh davar she'ein shaloi ma'ir chatas oif afilu chatas mehemenami. So the Gemara kiva the kanya lekapara kedidei damya ein echanami chatas. We couldn't say another animal. The reason why we said chatas is not for chatas oif, but like you're saying, a chatas is so it's still a little shver, I guess. Why did we say the dafka chatas? But we're saying that chatas is not going to be different because chatas is just as good as anything else. I'm sorry, no, it's the other way around. We're talking about where it's his own animal. Kiva the kind of kapara kedidei damya. No, right. So right. We're talking about where it's his own thing. We had to say b'dafka chatas ha'oif, so it's both going to happen at the same time. You're saying, so that's the case. But according to them, if you hold that you can never, ein adam oiseh davar she'ein shaloi, why any kind of thing would be, since we're talking about something which does not belong to him, it won't be usher until the end of the shechita, even after the shechita, and it would still be usher for. I try to understand something though. If we're talking about another animal, and even when he completes the maisa, so how do you have three things? How do you have that it's becoming usher? Oh, right. So the vart is, although it's not going to become, the animal itself is not going to become a nevad, but he was over on bringing the carbon. Since he brought this chatas was a successful chatas, he shechted it. In the end, he shechted it, so he did the ma'isa of bringing avodah zarah, of bringing something to avodah zarah, even though it doesn't have any effect on the animal, but he's going to be oived. He's going to be over for having done the ma'isa.
Why does it have to be specifically a chatas, according to this?
No, because if it's his own thing, then Ein Chanami certainly, right? If we're saying it because it's given the Kanyalele Kapara.
Yeah.
No, so we want it to be a Chatas Oif,
Because.
where it happens all at the same time.
Right.
Because had it been had it been an animal,
Yeah.
when since he's considered to be an owner, when he does even one simon, at that point he's going to been over. He's going to been. It would have become nevad. That would have give him the capacity to asa the animal.
And
Once he
then therefore
asas
there would be no
with the
other
first simon,
It would be an.
and then it's too late for him to be chayiv shvutei chutz. Okay, we're gonna have to stop over here. We'll finish this sugya as Shema Matzah Shabbos.
All right, thank you.
Have a good Shabbos.
Dr. Tabasil, thank you.